It is the scenario that a lot of people fear around the Bay Area. We have been talking about fire danger and bad weather. These leading to what we have seen here in the Oakland Hills. We have had a fire today that we have been watching all afternoon, unfolding live as several homes have burned in the Oakland Hills. It broke out at around 1 p.m., forcing thousands of people to evacuate and damaging at least 7 homes.
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
All right, and we are taking a live look right now of the fire that continues to burn. This is from our chopper. Within the last half hour, Oakland Fire has confirmed that forward progress has been stopped on this fire. Very good news there. It has burned 13 acres. It broke out at about 1:15 and spread very quickly, eventually to 5 alarms, helped by those strong winds and dry conditions. Again, at least 7 homes were damaged. Firefighters raced to evacuate people living close to those flames. And here is a map of the area we're talking about right off at 580. Near the Keller exit and Mountain Boulevard, homes have been evacuated on Crystal Ridge Court, Campus Drive, and east of Stone Ridge, and some lanes have been shut down on and off on 580. You can see from our chopper video of that flames reaching right up to that home on the hillside. That fire prompting an aggressive response on the air and the ground from agencies from several counties, as well as CAL FIRE. And you can see from this chopper video, one of those airdrops, more than 80 firefighters were working to control that fire alongside state crews. And Oakland Fire Department posting this video shortly after that fire breaking out, crews trying to protect some of the lower homes closer to the freeway at Mountain Boulevard and Maynard. Neighbors describe what it was first like when they heard the news.
We got a call from our nephew who just happened to be driving by on 580. So you guys got a fire going. We came out and it was across the street on the freeway side. And the fire was going, and then it jumped over onto the church property and started to go up the backside of the hill, and then the house on the corner. The roof was on fire. The fire department got here pretty quick, started putting out as much as they could. And now we see that it's jumping back. But we have a water tower in the back, and it's on that side, and there's houses back there, so hopefully they'll get it quickly, but they're doing the job the best they can.
All right, we have live team coverage now from the scene. Let's get straight out to Wilson Walker, who is live in the hills above the fire. Wilson, we were talking all afternoon, and you watched sort of an eerie scene. People had left, firefighters doing all their hard work.
Yeah, the neighborhood largely deserted when I got here, but the fire was certainly active. We sort of could quickly tell that this neighborhood was flooded with firefighters that you couldn't see. They were all here on the backside of the houses. As you can tell, there are 3-4 fire hoses on each property here on the hillside above the fire. But not everybody had left. Let me give you a little look at what it was like before the last family here evacuated this neighborhood. This fire, think about it, you're standing in your backyard watching watching the air attack unfold above your house, and this fire is burning right below you. I think these folks maybe weren't quite concerned until that fire popped up a little bit. And you remember, as we were watching it, it was kind of going from laying back a little bit to firing up with the brown plumes as it charged up a little bit. They decided to leave, but up and down this street, there are fire hoses running through alleyways into backyards. There are firefighters up and down the neighborhood watching the fire below. And it really was those fire retardant drops that we saw that seemed to have calmed things down here a little bit. You're getting a good look at the helicopters that continue to come right over the houses here. So a real scare in this neighborhood. From what I have seen, people largely deserted. And thankfully, that fire starting to calm down.
What a different scene behind you from what we just saw a couple of hours ago. I mean, it almost looks idyllic there. No smoke in the air.
It's thinning out. With the crest of the hill and the vegetation, which obviously causes the problem, we're looking at sort of the charred tops of those eucalyptus trees down there. So I can't really see the ground, but the smoke certainly seems to be dissipating a little bit.
All right. Very good news. Thanks for your work out there today, Wilson. We've been talking about evacuations in several neighborhoods, and our Suji Nam is at Merritt College, where a lot of those people are being told to go. Suji, what is it like over there right now? How many people would you say evacuated there?
There are about a dozen or so residents, Anne, that I've seen here that have evacuated this afternoon, including one person right here next to me, Roger Miller. Roger, tell me about what you saw, what you heard. Where were you when all of this was going down?
Yeah, so my wife and I were actually in our house working from home today, and we were doing business calls, et cetera. So I was on actually calling a colleague of mine in Atlanta on a video conference call and talking through things, and then I heard helicopters. And then when I heard the helicopters, I said, I think I got to wrap this up because it doesn't sound normal. And then I could hear a PA system from the police going over saying, people on Crystal Ridge Court, you have to evacuate. And so ran outside, looked, saw smoke, ran back inside, told my wife, and then we started packing up the car. Albums, computers, phones. She got the passports, thankfully. And then we left and then came over down the hillside partway. And then I went down around a little hiking path around the house to see where the fire was. And then once I got there, I could see it was at the bottom of the hill, not towards the middle or the top. And at that point, I thought we were not as bad as we were back in 20 years ago, 22 years ago, 2002, where we actually saw smoke and flames up behind the houses across the street. That was actually a different event, but a lot scarier, quite frankly.
So, Roger, when you were packing up all your belongings frantically in the car, what goes in your head as you're trying to pack up all your valuables?
What do you want to grab? How long do you want to take grabbing it? And then you're always worried about when you're making the trips out to the car, trying to look to see, can you see flames? Can you see smoke? Do I need to leave now or do I have another minute or two, right? But ultimately, we're going out. And then once we said, yep, we got everything we think we need, left, fire trucks are coming in the street. There were already 2. We were leaving, probably 3 or 4 more came in. Police cars, police on motorbikes. They're going through PA systems and then driving across Campus Drive. They started going door to door to make sure people were evacuating.
So relative to where the hotspot for that brush fire is, how close are you to that area?
From our neighbors across the street, they have the nice bay views. We don't have that, unfortunately. But you go down the hillside, it's probably about 200 or 300 yards down the hillside, and there's a grove of cypress trees down there, and that's where I could see the flames in the trees. So
a couple last questions, but you mentioned that you were here when the other major fire happened. This isn't a feeling, this isn't evacuation that, you're new to. You've done this before. You've done this drill before.
Yeah, we have, but we didn't actually evacuate. The response was not as many fire trucks at the time, but they had a lot more planes and helicopters, dive bombing, dropping retardant, dropping water, et cetera. But we ended up with a few fire trucks, some CDF fire rangers were on site. So, we gave them some Gatorade, some waters and things of that nature. And then we never left the house. So for whatever reason, that was scarier, but we never evacuated. This one, we were forced to evacuate. That's the difference.
Well, Roger, I'm glad you and your wife are safe. Let's hope for good news for you and all your residents. Thank you so much for talking to us today. And I'll send it back to you guys.
Nam live for us in Oakland. Thanks so much. Let's bring in meteorologist Darren Peek. Darren, we've been talking about this for a week. The fire danger that was coming, red flag warning, and here we saw this fire breaking out today.
And so you were on the air for this from the 1 o'clock hour up until about 4 o'clock today. We were watching the flames, we were watching the smoke. There was one moment during that live coverage where the story of how this fire was behaving today was just crystallized for me as I joined you. And it's in this time lapse. See the big monitor here? That goes back to about 1:30, right about the time you went on the air. We're going to watch the flames on there, and we could tell right about here, that fire was going uphill. See the direction there? Every once in a while, you get a
As they do.
As they do if left to their own devices. If they're being driven by a very strong offshore wind event, the winds that are coming into the bay today would have pushed that fire the complete opposite direction.
Okay, and that's what we were supposed to have, these dry offshore winds, Diablo.
In that case, that fire would have gone downhill. So at least a takeaway for us to see, okay, if there's one positive takeaway on this, we're not driving those flames downhill towards more homes. Instead, the fire's doing what it wants to do on its terms, not being overwhelmed by offshore winds, and It's following the topography uphill. So latest count, about 13 acres on this fire. Let's put the wind streams on here. When you take a look at the way the wind right now is moving through the bay, you see the story that we came away with from watching the time lapse. There are offshore winds here. Strong northeasterly winds. We still have a red flag warning. This wind event is verifying. And it's going right along with what the forecast models had it pinned is doing. Come over here to the East Bay Hills. It's almost like a dividing line there. You've got your easterly winds, and when they reach the crest, there's almost like a cross line there. Bottom line is we're not seeing the intensity of those winds follow through on the downslope side of the East Bay Hills. So that's where the good news comes in on here. There's still very low relative humidity. This is still a fire that needs to be totally contained. We are not out of the red flag warning until we get to 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So with that in mind, let's switch from looking at where these winds are now, and what we want to do is bracket about the next 12 hours. There's going to be a slight uptick in the intensity that's driving the offshore winds in the overnight hours tonight in the North Bay Mountains. We're concerned how that might play out here. And if we take that, well, now what we're going to look at on here is the next 12 hours, and you're going to see a subtle jostling back and forth of winds, picks up in intensity in the North Bay, but it doesn't really necessarily pick up in a big way through the East Bay Hills. So there is some good news in terms of that and the fire's likely behavior going forward. We've been watching this in a number of ways. One of the other tools we've got now to put on the virtual map, if we can get a high view and look down, I'm going to put the locator back on here. The satellite imagery is actually able to detect heat signatures. That is something that will come into play when we have large-scale wildfires. We wanted to see if it was working today for this fire. Barely. It's slightly brighter over here through the East Bay Hills, but this is not the kind of fire that would register on a tool like this just yet. But it's a tool we've got, and we're likely going to be able to use that down the road as we go through fire season. So keeping in mind the real headline is to get us through tomorrow night at 8. The only other things in the 7-day forecast to take a look at are the fact that we have no more offshore wind events after this one, and there are no real significant changes. Here's your 7-day forecast for the inland microclimate. Winds calm down by Sunday morning, and then maybe you get a little bit of a warm-up as we get towards the middle of next week. We might have a daytime high in the upper 80s. That's not bad. It's a little warmer than average for this time of year, but it's not the kind of intense heat that would lend greater concern to the landscape being able to dry out more, which is really what we want to watch. So one takeaway from this, Ann, is what comes next? And we know this is the time of year where we're vulnerable to more offshore wind events. We are going to be in fire season until we get a widespread wetting rain across the entire bay. That could come in 3 weeks, might not get here till January. We've seen that in years past. So what we need to end this vulnerability is the first good rainmaker of fall, at least in the next 7 days. I don't see it. Keep your fingers crossed. It comes sooner than that.
All right. Well, I am getting that we lucked out that the winds were not as dry offshore as they could have been today.
Yes.
But they still could be over the next 24.
They won't pick up in great intensity. They might ebb and flow a little bit, but I don't see any reason to believe that we're going to see winds that top what they did this afternoon through the East Bay Hills.
Very good info and a relief to a lot of people living in those fire-prone areas. Darren Peek, thanks so much. Let's go out to Lauren Toms right now. She's also out in the hills above that fire. Lauren, you've been talking with the Oakland Fire Chief and also the mayor about the response. What are they saying?
Yeah, that's correct. This is still a very active situation. You can see this scene behind me. I'm going to step out of the way. You can see about at least 24, maybe even 30 fire crews, police officers here. You can see some water here in this neighborhood. I'm told the fire actually started on the left side of this street here on the freeway, and it jumped this street and landed in this house. We're told that neighbors woke up to an explosion sound today. This fire is not yet contained, but here at this location, this fire is somewhat contained. It then spread up the hill in this direction. It's hitting a lot of eucalyptus trees. It almost smells like burning incense out here with all of the smoke coming from the eucalyptus trees. We've seen the fire helicopters come in several times with water dumps. So a very active situation, crews working constantly. I'm even still seeing some embers on the ground slowly burning out. But my videographer here, Alex Montano, just a couple of minutes ago, he caught up with the Oakland Fire Chief here, who says that if it wasn't for the quick response of some of these crews, this would have been a much different situation.
We were prepared for this. We had put together pre-positioned rigs that could get here quickly. We had a very quick response. This was wind driven, so it took off very quickly.
Now you can see right now we're seeing a helicopter dropping another round of water on these burning embers as this fire moves up this hill here in the Oakland Hills. Now, my colleague Alex Montano also spoke with the mayor of Oakland, Sheng Tao. She is still on scene here speaking with first responders and other media crews. Take a listen to what she had to say just minutes ago.
I just want to thank Oakland Fire Department for responding to this call quickly. Their quick action really helped save infrastructure and save lives. This is a real stark reminder that everyone should sign up for AC Alert.
Now, defensible zones, very, very important in this area. Of course, that's at least 10 to 30 feet of space outside and around your home. You can see this picture here of this house that did catch fire earlier today. You can see some of the roof has burned off, and you can see a lot of water in this area still making its way out as fire crews work tirelessly to get this situation under control. Again, you can really smell the effects of this fire over here as it burns through eucalyptus and up this hill here. We're told that there have not been any injuries. This whole area has been evacuated, and everyone right now is on standby waiting to hear when it is safe for them to return.
All right, Lauren Toms live for us in Oakland. Thanks for that report. And this increased fire risk this weekend is why PG&E planned power shutoffs for customers in several Bay Area counties. You can see a live look here at their outage map. Each of those triangles representing at least 5,000 homes and businesses affected by power shutoffs. And the outages began Thursday evening. They could continue through Sunday. The shutoffs impacting customers in Napa, Sonoma, Solano counties, as well as parts of Contra Costa, Alameda, and Santa Clara counties. Wind gusts are expected to reach more than 50 miles an hour at times, which may cause trees and power lines to break.
With power lines, sometimes they get broken off and they fall down to the ground. Well, when they fall down to the ground and they're still live or still hot, they could spark a fire.
Yeah, CAL FIRE says a spark could quickly lead to a large fire because of that dry vegetation and those high winds, which is exactly what we saw in Oakland today. Again, though, as Darren mentioned, it could have been worse. PG&E says the power is expected to be restored by noon on Sunday, and we are going to continue following this live here on air, as well as on our website, KPIX.com, and streaming on the CBS News app. Again, forward progress stopped in the Oakland Hills at 13 acres after several homes burned. We're going to have more updates coming up right after the break.